All right, yesterday, we learned about the uniqueness of Hanukkah, and namely that it's the only holiday in Judaism that doesn't, one of the differences, of course, but an overlooked one, and that is in the holiday of Hanukkah, there are no meals. It's no commandment to make a meal. In all the other holidays, of course, except for the fast days, there's a commandment to make a meal. On Rosh Hashanah, on Passover, on Sukkot, on Shavuos, on Purim. It's a commandment to make meals. In Hanukkah, there is no commandment to make meals. Usually a meal consists of food, bread, minimum, bread, water, wine. That's the minimum of a meal. The main thing of Hanukkah is not bread, it is not water, and it's not wine, but it is oil. Oil. The miracle of Hanukkah is by means of oil. Yeah. It's by means of oil. What does this thing come up for? Yeah. Hello. What is this? Who made this? Who is sending this to me? By means of oil. This. Oh. All right. Says the Rebbe, what is oil? The fact is bread and water and wine and oil correspond to different aspects of the Torah, to the degree that really, because the Torah is creating the world, the Torah is the main thing. So the Torah oil. So the Rebbe said that water and bread, that corresponds to the revealed aspects of the Torah. The Talmud, the Chumash, the laws of the Torah. The wine, that refers to the secrets of the Torah, like the Kabbalah and mysteries. But oil, that's the secrets of the secrets. That's the secrets of the secrets. What's the secrets of the secrets? Like we talked about in the previous mimer about the 8 anointed men, levels of the Torah, which are totally beyond and above any sort of understanding in a normal way. The essence of godliness, if you want to call it, which is in the Torah. The same way you can't understand God, you can't understand the essence of the godliness in the Torah, even more so. So why do you, so that's the highest level. So there it comes out that the time of the Greeks ruled over the Jews was one of the lowest periods in the history of Judaism. Almost all of the Jews agreed to defile Judaism, to agree with the Greeks. They didn't mind the Greeks defiled the temple, they defiled the oil, who cares? Right? One of the lowest periods of Judaism, lowest periods of Jewish enthusiasm, except for that when the Baal Shem Tov came. But in any case, it was correspondent to the time in the time of the Baal Shem Tov, when Judaism was also at a tremendous low. So that's when the deepest ideas of the Torah were revealed. The oil of the Torah, oil is the deepest. So the Rebbe says that's the whole idea. In order to combat this deep darkness of the Greeks, that everybody thought it was the greatest thing in the world. I mean, it just seeped into the fiber of every fiber of Jewish souls, that the Jews thought that the Greeks were just the last word. That was the best thing that could possibly happen to Judaism, was the Greeks came and freed us, from these laws, who knows what. And they were our friends. The Greeks are our friends. What could be better than that? To have a friend, a Greek, to look like the Greeks, to be accepted by the Greeks. And the only way that this could be combated was with the secrets of the Torah. Here we go. That's the oil. Let's explain the connection. We can explain the connection of Hanukkah to the oil of the Torah. At first glance, it's not understood. Oh, that's what we did. But that's what we did here. Explanation. It's known that the Greeks, that's what's called Chachma of Klippa. Wisdom of selfishness. Chachmas chitzonius, which is called external wisdom. Shebezaman ahu, in those times, the philosophers were machishim and nevuah. They denied that there was such a thing as prophecy. Of course, there's inspiration, but to say that this is what God wants, especially because the prophets, you have to understand, the philosophers, they came to explain what nature is, not to control nature. They came to explain, especially to excuse human lusts and desires and things like that, to excuse them. Possibly to show a person that it's not worthwhile, there's more profitable things instead of going on and killing people. It's better just to, whatever, to meditate, or whatever ideas they had. But certainly not to force anyone to do anything against their will. Explain. You're the boss. Prophets were exactly the opposite. Prophets came to tell people to do things against their will. Prophets came to tell people things they didn't want to hear. Like what we just said, that Jeremiah the prophet was killed, Isaiah the prophet was killed, right? Amos, they say, was killed. Zechariah was killed. They were killed by the people. The people didn't want to hear what they had to say. Come along the Greeks, and the Greeks said, you know why they were killed? They should have been killed because there was no such thing. They were fakers. They made it up. Then there was the wisdom of the Greeks. The great philosophers were there, and they wanted to overpower the chachma of the Kabbalah of godliness and its foundations of Judaism, which is that God talks to people. The whole Torah, except for the first two commandments that the Jews heard directly from God, the whole entire Torah is just a prophecy of Moses. They saw Moses went up 120 days. He went up on Mount Sinai, didn't eat anything, didn't this. And he came back down and told everybody what says in the Torah. And then there's the prophets after him. The book of Deuteronomy, he spoke himself. The book of Deuteronomy, Moses did not speak at Mount Sinai. All the rest he spoke at Mount Sinai. Right? The book of Deuteronomy spoke just before the Jews went into Israel. The philosophers of the Greeks, their thing is to deny and to, to defeat the wisdom of godliness and the foundation of the Torah and the faith in God and his commandments. Because they said it's just totally above any sort of logic and understanding. Where did you get this idea? That's, you want to be religious, be religious. They also had their gods, the Greeks. But their gods exist only, something like the same thing Christianity and all these, their God exists only to benefit me. Their God exists in order to benefit me, so that I'll have a better life in this world and the next world. Look, and therefore the Greeks, Timu would call it Shemanim. Therefore the Greeks, they defiled all of the light, all of the oil, in the Holy Temple, because oil is this level of, we said before, wisdom, holy wisdom. They wanted to make the Jews forget your Torah. They didn't mind the Jews learning the Torah. They didn't want the Jews to learn the Torah and say it's God's Torah. We can say, she's Gabrus Chachmas Yavan, this overpowering, that this victory of the wisdom of the Greeks, which is Klippa, was so great that they wanted to forget make them forget the Torah. This comes from, where did they get it from? Because they had a nurture from the Torah. They used the Torah improperly. That's the Greeks. Yavan, we find, somebody brought me a paper. They're doing a thing, and a friend of mine, he wants to get a master's degree in philosophy. He needs it for his work, whatever. So he understands English, they didn't understand, but not, really sort of, how do you say, college English. So he brought me this paper that somebody wrote about Spinoza. And the whole argument about Spinoza said what's lacking in Judaism is courage. Anyway, he brought me this paper. It's the big letters. I think they paid the guy who wrote it. They only paid him for like words that are more than 5 letters because it's all these big words. And it's all these convoluted sentences instead of saying, 2 is, 2 and 2 is 4. It says that, 4 is not the opposite of the negation of the positivity of the number duality, which is, just going back and around and just say 2 and 2 is 4. No, I have to say it in big letters. Anyway, so it comes out that according to this thing, that Spinoza, he's like the father of all of these, anti-Torah and anti-God and anti-commandment ideas. He's like the big father of like Zionism and all this and secularism and what is it, Moses Mendelssohnism is, whatever these people is. And what was his whole thing? His whole thing was exactly like the Greeks. Exactly like the Greeks. You're the boss. You're the boss. You're the measure of all things. There's other powers, there's other beings, there's other ways of explaining everything in the world, but God is not the boss. Don't ever think that you have to control yourself because God gives you a commandment, unless you understand it. If it's to your benefit, you can understand. There was another guy in Israel that also, this guy, Lubavitcher, I'll say, that's what he said. Do things that are not understandable because we live in this meaningless world. But God is not the boss. He can't tell you what to do. You're the boss. And says that's the idea. Where did he get these powers from? Where did they get this tremendous? The Greeks, they got it from the Torah. They got it from the Torah. They were very well aware that the Torah existed. There's a story that Talmi Amelech, he wanted to have the Torah translated into Greek. That's a whole long story. The Septuagint, what is it called? Septuagint. Metzina, we find that there's a special in Yavan. Okay, the Greek language is interestingly enough. The Greek language was in many ways it was the replacement for Hebrew. The Greek language, we don't have that language anymore. It doesn't exist anymore. The original Greek language doesn't not exist anymore. But when it did exist, it said that you can write like a Sefer Torah. We'll see. You can write a Megillah, things like this. You can write it in Greek. That even in the books Torah, Nevi'im, and Ketuvim, they did not permit the Torah to be written in any other language except for Hebrew, right? Except for Hebrew and Greek. Omokra, the Torah said, Yafta Elokim liyafet, v'yishkan ba'ol Hashem. These are the blessings that that Noah gave to his 3 sons. It says, God made beautiful Yafet. He had 3 sons, right? Noah had 3 sons. Shem, Becham, Yafet. So he gave a blessing that Yafet would dwell in the tents of Shem. Now Shem, he's going to be the progenitor of the Jewish people. And it says that Yafet, that eventually he's going to come out to be the Greeks. He will dwell in the tents. Now the tent usually is the place where you learn Torah. Matov Olecha. Yoshev Oel. It says Yefito, the beauty of Yafet, which this is Greek. Greek is the language, as another, it's a synonym for this Yafet, Greek, because the Greek language was Lashon Yafa. Mishal Kol B'nei Yafet. This is Greek is the language, the most beautiful language of all the other nations that came from Yafet. This is an Oel Hashem. What does it mean, Oel Hashem? In the Jewish people, the Greek could be interchanged with Hebrew. It's permissible according to the Torah. That the Torah cannot be translated properly except in Greek. And so we see that the language, Greek language, is different from all the other languages because it was understood by the wise men of Israel, because they explained the Torah in the language of Greece for Talmi Amelech, for the king, what is it? Talmi. King Talmi. Petalmi, what is it? That this translation that they made was so popular that it was by them, by the Jewish rabbis, that the Greek translation was as common in their mouth as Hebrew was. Kilo Ashuris, like it was Hebrew. So when the Torah was translated into Greek, and the Greeks ruled the whole world, so all the Jews were under the rule of the Greeks. And the Greek language was a language that was very expressive of philosophical ideas. And they had this blessing, was given in the Torah, that Yefet would be in the tense of Shem. So therefore it says that the Greek language was the only one that could be interchangeable with Hebrew. Nevertheless, it says, cut from the Talmud Melech, they wrote the Torah when they wrote the Torah in Greek. Nevertheless, it says that when they wrote the Torah for Talmud, the king Talmud in Greek, it says it's in the Masechah Sofrim. It says that it was bad for the Jewish people, like the day that they made the golden calf. The opposite of the giving of the Torah. So it doesn't make any sense. One second. On one hand, we said that the Greek language was permissible to translate the Torah into Greek. That the Greek language was interchangeable with Hebrew. It says you could write a Megillah in Hebrew, in Greek, it says. The Greek of those days. So it's a good thing. All the rabbis agreed with it, that it's okay. On the other hand, it says that when the Torah was translated into Greek, which that was the whole reason that everybody knew that everybody was familiar with Greek, was because of this translation. It says that when the day that it was translated, it says that it was a bad day for the Jews. I didn't say a traumatic, a destructive day for the Jews, just like the day that they made the Egel. They made the golden calf. Opposite of the Torah. The explanation is this, because the fact that the Torah was drawn down below into the language of the non-Jews, it was explained. And God even said to Moses that when you come up to the Jordan River, you should write the Torah. It says Berei Tev. You translate it into 70 languages. And the best of those translations, the most accurate, was Greek. But what? But because Talmud HaMelech commanded that the Torah should be done in Greek, that day was bad for the Jews, like the day they made the golden calf. Why? Because the thing was made not mitzad tzivu Hashem, because it's not that God commanded them. Ela drisha Talmud HaMelech, but Talmud HaMelech said to do it. The king of the Greeks. And therefore, there was a place to worry that the thing, Yenutzala, would be used afterwards in a way that was not good. Till it came to the opposite of the giving of the Torah. In other words, you could understand every idea of the Torah was translated, and the translation was beautiful, accurate. So you can understand the simple meaning of everything in the Torah. You can understand it, but nevertheless, it could be used totally improperly. Yeshlomo, we can say that as a result from this, there came the decree of the Greeks to make them forget the Torah. Torah techa, daika. Like it's known that the Torah is the tremendous, what did they say? The Torah is a tremendous wisdom and an incredible intellect. The Greeks agreed with this. The Torah is a very impressive book because they were tremendously wise men and they were also curious. They wanted to know the truth about everything. So they were very, impressed by the tremendous otzim hafla, the amazing wisdom of the Torah, and even in the laws of the Torah. But if so, what was their problem? Let the Jews do their thing and the Greeks will do their thing. But they opposed to the fact that the Torah was from God. They agreed that the Torah could be from inspired people. but not that the Torah was exactly, the letters of the Torah were exactly the words of God. Namely, they opposed the holiness of the Torah. They opposed the godliness of the Torah. This is what the Greeks fought against. In fact, they used this translation of the Torah into Greek, Lamod al Godel Otzam, to understand how great was the wondrous wisdom of the Torah. A tremendous wisdom. Almanat in order to tameh, the holiness of the Torah. So that it shouldn't be recognized that it's the Torah, the wisdom of God. It's just that the Jewish religion, the Jews are smart people. Jews love intellect. Here we see the great percentage of Jews that get the Nobel Prize, especially in physics and in mathematics and these things which require, intellect. So the Jews, when they set their mind to it, all the Jews are, wise, and they're tremendously intelligent, and they're genius even, right? They're genius people, the Jews. And they said the same thing is, Einstein is a genius in physics, and there's a genius in mathematics, and so Moses was a genius in religion. And so Moses wrote this tremendously wise book, and he had a lot of pupils that were like him also. But they said, nevertheless, it is human wisdom, just like the philosophers of Greek. This is the Indian, the whole idea, what it means that they defiled all of the oil in the Holy Temple. So what was the miracle? The miracle was, when I lost the place. There. Here it is. The main miracle of Hanukkah was that they found pure oil. They found one bottle of pure oil that was sealed with the seal of the high priest, Kohen Gadol. And there wasn't enough in this one little bottle to light for all 8 days. It was going to take them 8 days to make new oil. Because the Kohanim had to prepare themselves and etc. Anyway, it takes 8 days to make the pure oil, and they only had enough for 1 day. It was made a big miracle, and it lasted for 8 days until they could press the grapes and they could make new pure oil. Since the decree of the Greeks was to make them forget your Torah, God, not to forget the Torah, but to forget that the Torah was God's Torah, that the Torah is above understanding. In other words, the Torah is understanding, but the fact that you can understand the Torah, that's above understanding, that's godly. They wanted to defile the holiness of the, remember the Greeks did not break the bottles, they didn't spill out all the oil, they didn't destroy the temple, they didn't melt down the menorah, they left everything the way it was. They just said, it's true, they wrecked things up, it was hard for the Jews to serve again, but nevertheless, they defiled everything. So therefore, because the Greeks, they opposed the holiness of the Torah and the holiness of the temple, right? The Greeks also were religious people, not holy. Therefore, they had to be this miracle of the holiness of the wisdom of the Torah. That is the Torah of God. In other words, we exist before the Torah. We exist for the Torah. The Torah does not exist for us. The Torah is there so that we will know how to serve the creator of the universe. And the creator of the universe is for us. He creates us. He wants for our benefit. But sometimes it doesn't come out that we see the benefit. Here, Jews have been murdered and destroyed through the generations, and they still hold on to the Judaism. That's your Torah. By means of this, that they found one bottle of oil that was not, the Greeks did not touch, and even more, that they found one oil that was sealed with the seal of the high priest. This is the highest level of the pure oil that the Greeks could touch. that the Greeks had no ability to touch it. But this was made a miracle, and it lit for 8 days. That the 7 days, in addition to the first day when they found the bottle, there was enough in the bottle for 1 day, so the first day wasn't a miracle, right? But the fact that they found the bottle, that was a miracle. There's other opinions also that when they finished all the 8 days, they still saw the lighted, the oil had not burned at all, or that every day just burned 1/8 of the oil. And there's different opinions what happened. But in any case, these 7 days after the first day that they found it, this includes the whole entire cycle of time, 7 days of the week. This idea of the pure oil is especially hinting at the hidden aspects of the Torah. The hidden aspects of the Torah, that's the aspect that stresses that it's God's Torah. When a person learns the revealed Torah, since he's dealing with matters of the world, he's talking about, somebody steals my ox or somebody, whatever is damages my property. These are laws which are physical things. So it could be that a person can make more and more darkness in the world. And because of he realizes the tremendous wisdom of the Torah, that he could make the mistake and think this is a tremendous wisdom, especially if you're good at learning Torah. You can think this is a wondrous thing, the Torah amazing, and you won't recognize that it's the wisdom of God. And as the Torah will make you more and more egotistical, more and more superior. And that's bad. That's the opposite of the Torah. It's not God's Torah, it's my Torah. What's the advice? What can we do? How can you get rid of this egotism that you got? Let's say you're a genius, you know the whole Torah. You can explain to everybody's coming and asking you questions. What can you do? It says that when you learn these revealed parts of the Torah, you should learn it together with the secrets of the Torah. In other words, the secrets of the Torah, like Chassidut, teaches you to know God. That by means of this, you can learn the revealed part of the Torah permeated with the holiness of the Torah. Then will be felt the wisdom, it's the wisdom of God. This is the idea of the oil of the Torah, more than even the wine of the Torah. Yes. In addition to the fact that the oil indicates on the secrets of the Torah, that's even above, it's just the regular secrets of the Torah. This stresses that oil is not this is stressed by the fact that oil cannot be drunk on its own. You have to mix it up with something else. But on the other hand, if a little drop of oil falls on a garment or something like that, it spreads out everywhere. This is like the oil of the Torah. On one hand, the oil of the Torah, the essence of the Torah, the secrets of the Torah, the deepest secrets of the Torah, has to be mixed in with the revealed part of the Torah. If you learn just the secrets of the Torah and you don't link it with the commandments, then the whole thing is worthless. On the other hand, when it is linked with it, the commandments, then it permeates everything in the world. Suddenly you see everything in the world is godly. Shagam limud, even the revealed parts of the Torah, has to be permeated with the holiness of the Torah, the wisdom of God. And this is also the main thing, that the oil is something that shines. Oil, says Shemen L'Ma'or, that by means of oil, it shines. This is the light of the Torah. It shines out, not only in the area where a religious Jew goes, but even outside of where he is, in this whole entire area. Like it says, when you light the candles of Hanukkah, that it's according to one opinion, it's a commandment to put it outside of your house. And you light it when it's already dark outside. Kalya the Ragla Tarmudai. It says when the last people leave the marketplace, that even in the time of darkness, and you put it outside, and you put it in a marketplace where there's what's called these last people, they're called the Tarmudai. This is the same letters as rebellers. Those people who rebel against God. Nevertheless, the light of Hanukkah can negate this and show them that there is God, that God is creating everybody. And suddenly everybody feels it. That there won't be even remaining even the feet of these rebellers. The lowest levels, because God is creating everything. He's creating everywhere. And the whole idea of evil in the world is when you deny this. You use your free will to deny the fact that God is creating you and that God loves you and that God has the Torah for you and that God cares about what you do. It does away with all of the rebellions, and it does away with anything that causes a person even the possibility to rebel against God. And even more, that the light of Hanukkah, this calls Kilion B'Kolos Nefesh. This causes a tremendous excitement. It says it causes even the lowest people to be excited about godliness. That also they will come to the level of Kalot Nefesh, excitement, total devotion and excitement for the creator of the universe and his Torah, because of the light of the Hanukkah that shines, the secrets of the Torah. That's the idea of the oil of the Torah, as we'll explain more, God willing, tomorrow. Let's just do the Yom. Where is this here? 1 second, 1 minute. What happened? Why can't I get to this here? Maybe it's here. Oh. Huh. No. Huh. All right, maybe today I don't see. I'm not able to get access to this thing, to anything. Okay, what can I do? I'm sort of stuck over here. It doesn't allow me to do what I want. Is this it? No, can't get into it. Okay, my friends, we'll just stop the share. See you today, 3 o'clock, God willing. Have a good day with Moshiach now.